The first thing that anyone who is planning to head out in search of elk should know is that elk, by nature, are very vocal animals. As a matter of fact, out of all of critters that are related to elk, deer, moose, etc., the elk is hands down the most vocal. So, when it comes to learning how to call elk, you need to first understand every sound that an elk makes and what it means. This can typically take some time to master. However, if you spend some time on listening to the vocalizations of elk, you can begin to get your head around it fairly quickly. The first thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to elk calling and elk hunting is that both the bulls and cows vocalize throughout the day. Most archery and muzzle loader season dates are set right around the rut, which is usually the peak time for elk vocalization. Both bulls and cows are very active and very vocal, which is one of the main reasons that the rut is one of the best times to hunt. Elk use vocalizations to locate each other and also to notify other elk of danger. The types of elk vocalizations can be broken into a couple different types of elk calls. Chirps are often used by cow elk and sometimes bulls. The best way to describe a chirp is a vocalization that is made when elk are around each other. Think of it as talking around the water cooler. There isn't really anything going on, and the elk are just making noise to each other. Chirps are great filler elk calls that hunters use to give the impression of a large group of cow elk just contently mingling. This can be very effective in attracting a mature bull elk to within range of the hoit. Mews are highly variable elk calls and vocalizations. They can be used to illustrate threats, submission, sparring between bulls, or just a simple communication from cow to bull, cow to her calf, or locating other elk. Barks, another common vocalization that elk can make, is what is referred to as a bark. Barks sound just like you would think, very pointed and very abrupt. Elk typically use barks as an alert call, letting the group know that there is danger present. As a hunter, you want to avoid barking. Bugle, without question the most well-known elk call has to be the bugle. The bugle is unmistakable. Bull elk bugle, and they do so for a couple of different reasons. Bull elk bugle as a sign of dominance. However, they also will bugle as a means to locate other elk. The bugling can be a great way to not only locate a bull during the rut, but can also be a great way to call in a bull to your location, especially if he is very responsive. Mature bulls will tend to locate other bugling bulls in an attempt to run them out of the area, much like white-tailed deer respond to rattling. These factors alone make bugling one of the most important elk calls that anyone elk hunting should know how to use. A bugle is also a way for a bull to call cows into him. Chuckle, a chuckle is the series of grunts following a bugle. The bugle and chuckle can be used in combination to present a full sequence to draw out bulls with the indication of dominance. Calling an elk and having him respond and come to the call is the ultimate in elk hunting. However, there are times when leaving the calls in your pocket is the best tactic. It may not seem as much fun, but if the elk are vocal on their own, slipping in closely without making a peed can be the best approach. They are already talking, and if you make a call, you are alerting the elk of your presence and they will be looking for you. If you close the distance and don't feel you can get any closer without spooking them, then you may want to begin to call. In the end, it is elk hunting the biggest mistake that any hunter can make, no matter what game you are chasing, is to assume that because you sound good on the call that you are going to be successful. That couldn't be further from the truth. There is still a hunting element that comes into play each and every time you hit the woods. Success comes from relying on your skills, instincts, ability to read the sign and situation, and above all the behavior of the animals you are chasing. When it comes to elk hunting, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and adventure, some elk hunting tips that you learn before a trip could also be a critical factor in success. In the grand scheme of things, put yourself in the best possible position for success. In other words, elk calling and elk calls are just a small part of elk hunting. Much more relies on your ability and prowess as a hunter. The simpler the better when it comes to learning how to call elk. Once you have done your homework and have an idea of where the elk are, bugling at daybreak and through the early morning hours can be a great way to locate a bull. Bulls will tend to bug la in the mornings, much like a gobbler on the limb. He is attempting to round up his harem and ward off any would-be suitors. Likewise, if you find a bull bugling in the middle of the day, it is often a good thing for the elk hunter. Bringing it all together, when you put elk calls to use properly, you will locate a bull. The visibility is often a limiting factor in western hunting, so having a good set of vortex optics around your neck can help you make sure you are in the best position possible or whether or not you need to move. Contingent upon the situation. Once you have your bull located, it is usually time to put some miles on your woods and stream boots. Your goal is to close the distance with as much stealth as possible, or in some situations with as much calling as possible. Either way, one of you will close the distance. Keep in mind to constantly check the location of your bull along the way. Once you have drawn in close, then it is time to break out the mouth call and do your best to sound like a hot cow, or herd of cows with excited chirps and mews to allow the bull to take the final steps. At the end of the day, elk calling and elk calls are all about reading the responses you get from the animal. The goal is often to try to intercept a bull on his way to his herd, or an attempt to draw him off his herd. This requires you to have a good understanding of elk calls and elk vocalizations. There are many different types of bugles and cow calls, and learning what the elk are saying when making those sounds will help you determine if the elk are coming to you or calling you to them. To achieve that, you simply need to spend time in the field. Practice makes perfect, and if you put in the time, you can certainly reap the benefits.